Actually, it's an honor to be here. I'm the non-engineer of the family. So it's an honor for me to be able to present to a bunch of engineering, and obviously to honor my dad, who to me was an incredible man, an incredible hero. So I'll do the best I can to talk the English language in engineering, but most of what we do is on the commercial side. So if I get into too much of the commercial side, stop me. I'll do the best I can to answer some of the technical questions, such as fracking, that you might have. Okay? We good? All right, so we're going to do, Nextera is a company name. We started about, Ramon, what, 3-4 years ago? We used to be called FPL Group. But as we began to diversify more and more outside the state, the name Nextera, I'm not even sure how much we paid to have someone come up with this incredible name, right? But that's the name the consultants came up with. And it's actually doing fairly well. As a matter of fact, I think it's trading today, even though the market was down significantly, I think our stock held up fairly well today. It's at about 79. So this is the company. These numbers are a little bit dated. Actually, today we're at about 33 billion in market cap. So the company has grown significantly. The beautiful thing here is that most of this growth has been organic. I mean, we have bought a number of assets, but for the most part, we haven't had any major acquisitions. We did have some attempted acquisitions with Entergy, Constellation, and some other entities, but for the most part, the acquisitions that we have been really assets. So we bought a few nuclear plants, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And as you can see, there's about $62 billion in assets, about 4.6 million customers in the state of Florida. And then on the Nextera side, we have been predominantly building a lot of wind and taking advantage of the production tax credits, which almost expired this year. But actually, the House and the Senate were able to come together and extend the production tax credits. So on Florida, what you see here is basically we go all the way to Jacksonville. It's about 4.6 million customers. And that's about 52% of the state. Now, what's misleading is that you'll see oil on some of these. Basically, the only oil that we use, and we have reduced our oil consumption by 98%. 98%. So the only oil that we have in this company right now is backup oil in the event of a curtailment in natural gas pipelines. So it's 3-day backup supply that we have at each of our natural gas facilities. That's the only oil. We don't use any foreign oil. We have weaned off all foreign oil. If every utility in the United States weaned off foreign oil, the emission reduction in this country would be paramount to nothing you've ever seen before. So you can see some of the solar. We had 3 solar projects that we built. And then when we talk about modernizations, we'll talk a little bit about that. But basically what that is taking the existing infrastructure that we have in a location. For example, in this case, we'll talk about 3 of them. We had Cape Canaveral, Riviera, and Port Everglades. You take the existing transmission, the existing water, the existing land. We take and basically modernize, take out the existing technology, put in new technology. So we took those plants from oil to natural gas. And the savings to our customers are unbelievable. And not only that, the heat rate reduction is about 40% and about an 88% reduction in emissions. It's an amazing story. We'll talk about those. This is Nextera. You can see most of the assets are scattered. Actually, from Canada all the way to Texas, this is really the wind hub in the United States. That's where the wind really blows all the time, so you can see where we chase most of our wind assets. Then we've got nuclear plants, Seabrook up in New Hampshire, and then we've got a nuclear plant in Iowa, a nuclear plant in Wisconsin. We've diversified a lot, obviously, into the renewables. Most of these states have renewable energy policies that we've been able to take advantage of. And in most of these states, you also have a deregulated utility market where the utilities don't want to be in the generation business. So it allows us to go in, not as a utility, but as a wholesale generator and sell power. Most recently, though, we have set up offices in Houston and Austin, Texas, where we are expanding fairly significantly into the natural gas infrastructure, both on the storage and on the transportation side. And we're also looking to do that in Florida. We also have a retail company in Texas called JEXA, which does a lot of retail trading. And then we also have just begun basically setting up 2 transmission companies, one called Lone Star in Texas, another one called U.S. Transmission. So in this case, as many utilities are now pursuing transmission assets, and in many of these places where the wind blows, the transmission assets are too far away from the load. so the utilities are not wanting to invest. So what they do is it gives us the opportunity to go in there and, in essence, become a regulated entity in those states, but we're comfortable in that regulatory space. So this is FPL. There's 55, believe it or not, there's 55 utilities in Florida. Most people don't realize that. People say, oh, it's FPL. There's 55. A lot of them are municipalities. A lot of them are co-ops. There's 4 major utilities: TECO, which is Tampa Electric. There's Progress Energy that just got bought out by Duke out of North Carolina. And there's Gulf, which is owned by Southern Company. Of those, FPL is by far the largest. Now, the good thing is that we also have by far the lowest emission profile of any utility, any co-op in the state. What makes it even more compelling is that our rates are about, in many cases, about $30 per 1,000 kilowatt hours lower than anybody else, at least the average in the state. So we're the lowest utility bill in the state of Florida. We got the lowest emissions, and we've got the best profile. So the beauty of that is it's okay to be clean. We don't say green, we say clean, and I'll tell you a little bit about that, but it's okay to be clean and be the lowest cost. Now, when we identify clean, we like nuclear a lot, and we like natural gas a lot. So it's not just wind and solar and other renewables, but it's those things that have a very reliable source of energy, but at the same time, they have a very low emission profile. We've also got a fairly aggressive energy efficiency program. You can see the megawatt hours. I'm not sure what, that's a lot of megawatt hours. But basically what we talk about is that has allowed us to avoid building a number of power plants. So the more we can continue to pursue energy efficiency programs with the state and the regulators, will continue to avoid having to invest capital in some of these assets. Oops, let me see if I can. Can I play this, Elena, right here? I'll try to get this video. I don't know, you had the magic earlier. This is a new campaign. FPL has never been very aggressive when it comes to campaign marketing and being out in the public. And we've got a dynamic new president, Eric Szilagyi. We had a lot of new changes at FPL on top. And what we've been doing is beginning to promote our story. And we have a fairly good story. So this is what you're going to be seeing on TV now.
The sun is shining. The energy's high. And here at FPL, we can't wait to get started, because today we get to make a difference. Today, we get to help take on the day and make changes for the better. Because for us, it's not about doing what's convenient. It's about doing what's right. A promise that all of us are dedicated to every day. Working around the clock to be there when we're needed just a little, and to be there when we're needed the most. That's why we're reducing our dependence on foreign oil, making the grid stronger and smarter, tearing down inefficient plants, and building cleaner, more efficient ones that run on US-produced natural gas. All to keep bringing you the most reliable energy and the lowest bill in the state. At FPL, we're changing Florida's energy today to create a better tomorrow for all of us. At FPL, we're changing the current.
That's our new thing, changing the current. So it's pretty cool. That's a 30-second version. There's also a 60-second version, so I figured I'd spare you 30 seconds. But we're real proud of what's going on here. We obviously we're growing a lot, but by the same token, we're through our investments, we've been able to keep our costs down as the lowest cost. And what's interesting about that is, second to, I think, GE, FPL actually had some of the largest capital infusions over the last decade. We've invested over $10 billion while the economy has been in a very poor state. So it's allowed us to basically tell the story that investing capital in new technology and future technology is what allowed us to keep our costs down. And the no-brainer of that is, in this case, for example, we invested a lot in clean natural gas plants, which saves our customers for each plant about $500 million over the life of these assets in an NPV basis. So we're continuing to invest. We believe in continuing to be aggressive on the investment side. And what makes sense is, as long as we continue to invest in prudent investment, it keeps the cost to our consumers low. Now, we've really been the only company in the state that's been doing these investments. TECO hasn't, Southern hasn't, and now what you're seeing is TECO has issues with their coal plants. They're going to have to, eliminate some of this stuff. Progress has issues with coal plants, so they're looking to get into the whole natural gas phenomenon. So we wish them well. Okay, Elena, there you go. So this is a lot of debate about the cost of fuel and what's going on in this country. What's interesting about this graph is that most people give, especially the media, give nuclear a very bad name. But when you take a look at the cost of nuclear over the life of a project, this is on a levelized cost of electricity. So it's basically you're NPVing the cost over 30 years. That factors in the capital investment as well as the fuel. So the beauty of nuclear is, yes, it's a very exhaustive, very expensive process to actually get sited, permitted. You spend about $150 million just on the application. The federal government charges you $150 million just on the nuclear application. And then it's about a 10-year process to get yourself licensed and ready to go. With a lot of opposition, as we've been facing in South Miami. We've had a lot of issues related to the transmission corridor. But when you look at it purely on the economics, you can see nuclear still makes a lot of sense. Coal is still cheap. The issue with coal is I don't think you'll see a coal plant sited. If you wanted to get a coal plant sited in Florida, I don't think it would happen, at least in my lifetime, it wouldn't happen. So even though the costs are low for those that are currently generating, I think what you're going to see in coal is, one, a carbon tax that will ultimately come. No doubt it's coming. And I think at some point you're going to see a water tax, because water is going to be the next carbon. And when you have states such as Georgia and Alabama that went through the incredible flood, incredible droughts, part of the issue is there's no means to transport water from those heavy drought areas to the areas that are abundant in water. So you're going to start to see more and more emphasis on water. And part of the reason I like that is because it'll allow solar to become a much more natural play for us. And we'll talk a little bit about solar. So you can see natural gas, and I think the question was earlier about, what's causing some of this. Obviously, about 5 years ago, the whole thing was, oh my gosh, we have a bubble, it's going to burst, there's no gas, what are we going to do in this country? And now you're talking about 300-year supplies of natural gas. The gas has always been there. The issue has now been the technology called fracking, which allows all kinds of, different types of drilling, which actually can go out 5 miles this way instead of this way, is leading to all kinds of scenarios where the United States of America, if they want to, can be the leading producer and supplier of natural gas as well as energy to the whole world. We are sitting on a gold mine. For this economy here in the United States, there is no reason why we cannot be the leader in energy. The Russians, which control the spigot in Europe, are charging $14 an MMBTU, which is $1 million per BTU, British thermal units. Here in the United States, that natural gas is going for about $3. If we can export gas to Europe, the Russians are out of business. So the Russians are sending armies of lobbyists over to deal with the environmental folks in this country to give a bad name to a number of natural gas entities. Because as soon as we're able to send natural gas over to Europe, the Russians are out of business. They're done. And right now they use it for political leverage. And we just met with a bunch of British diplomats that, please, so they're using it as leverage with the Brits, not so much in the pricing, but they can turn the spigot on and turn the spigot off. And that's, and they realize that as soon as we're able to export natural gas, they're in trouble. So what you see here is not only that natural gas prices are falling, and they're going to probably be stable. Today there was a report, the Henry Hub report, which is probably the #1 index that said natural gas prices should probably stabilize anywhere from $4 to $5 for the next 10 years. So that's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Do you have the cost for solar and wind in relation to that? I
can talk about it when we get there. Basically, what happens is the problem with solar and wind is not, on an LCOE basis, it's probably between 10 and 13 cents, depending on the capacity factor of the region. The issue is because of the intermittency, you can't dispatch. You can't dispatch solar. So when our system guys, and Ramon knows it better than anybody else, when the system guys say, can you provide solar to me on whatever, November 23rd of this year, I can't do that. I can't, because it might be a cloudy day, it might be a rainy day, whereby nuclear, coal, natural gas is a firm, reliable power, and it has what they call capacity value. So when you buy and sell electricity, it's two factors. One is energy. So you're paid when the energy is delivered. The other one is capacity, which is an insurance payment that says when I need it, it's going to be there. And solar doesn't have a capacity value today. In some parts of Arizona and California, they're actually doing that because it's in a desert climate and there's more predictability. But here in Florida, there's just too much cloud coverage. Okay, so here's what's going on at FPL. So at FPL, I got great news and I got some not so great news. The good news is we've been able to keep the rates low. Your rates today are actually lower than they were 10 years ago. And the reason for that is, one, we've been obviously managing our O&M very prudently, but 50% of your bill is also fuel. And we've been able to invest in natural gas assets and convert to natural gas assets. So when you take a look at your bill, you're basically paying about $94.60 for 1,000 kilowatt hours. That's a pretty good deal. So our commitment is obviously to continue to be able to provide that service to you. That comes because natural gas prices have been, basically as low as they are. Had they continued to be $10, $14, your bills would be a lot more expensive, and we'd be looking to do something other than natural gas. So we're about 78% now natural gas in the state. So the good news is it's clean, it's reliable, it's very affordable. The bad news is you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. Right now we have 2 pipelines that feed the whole state of Florida. Both of them come from the Gulf of Mexico. So a bad hurricane, a curtailment, or God forbid a terrorist act, and then the state of Florida is in a brownout, basically rolling brownouts. So we've got about 16% nuclear. We're continuing with our nuclear efforts, but it's a much longer process. So this is what's going on. We have aggressively now been pursuing a 3rd pipeline because our gas needs and the state's gas needs continue to grow. And this is a pipeline that would basically originate what we call Transco 85, which is in Alabama. And then that natural gas would, in essence, flow through the center of the state, not be reliant on the Gulf of Mexico. So basically we're not so much trying to diversify our fuel mix, we're trying to diversify the supply. So the supply in this case is really the assets, the pipeline. And we're pushing hard. Right now we're in the middle of an RFP. We're evaluating. We should be awarding an RFP sometime in June or July. And this is where you can see, somebody's got the pointer, I got the pointer, right? But you see at Transco 85 in Alabama, that blue line would be the pipeline. And it would serve up to a hub in Orlando. Our interest is to basically take that hub from here to here. And anybody else can manage or own the other hub. But it won't just service FPL, it'll service other utilities in the state of Florida. So the beauty of this, it also creates an enormous amount of economic development for the state. It's bazillions of dollars in taxes and obviously a lot of jobs and job creation. So it's a heck of an economic development play also. So I think we've covered some of this, but obviously the benefits here, the more you can increase natural supply. Florida is not an indigenous natural gas, doesn't have indigenous coal, doesn't have indigenous oil. The only thing we really have here is the sun. So we are constantly paying other states to supply. We are the largest purchaser and consumer of natural gas in the United States. We FPL, not Nextera, FPL. We purchase about $5 billion every year of natural gas. Not 1 penny stays in the state of Florida. So it all goes to Texas. Rick Perry's very happy. It goes to Louisiana. Bobby Jindal's very happy. We just had Rick Perry here with Rick Scott talking about, kind of jostling back and forth on the economics. Texas has the #1 economy. Florida has now moved up to the number 3 economy. So when the media tells you all the bad things about Florida, let me tell you, Florida is actually doing very well. Our 4th graders here in the state of Florida just ranked #1 in the United States, #2 in the world, second to Finland. So there's a lot of very positive things going here on the economic side. Florida is open for business now. We've got a heck of a tremendous story on the unemployment. When the governor took office, he was, I think, 12.4% unemployment. We're down to 7.6. So it's a great story. And we're continuing to grow. And I think we're going to be continued growth because, at the end of the day, who doesn't want to be in paradise, right? Would you rather be in Texas where it's hot or cold or hot? Or you want to be in Florida? You got beaches, you got sunshine, and you got the U. That hurts me to say that, but we used to play against the U a lot. So these are the modernizations. This is what these natural gas plants look like. we recall the, sorry, Jerry, I had to take a shot at the beloved one.
No, it's good.
It's good?
We get into
Oh, well, I thought you were saying. But here's, you remember those big old stacks that you see on the highways, 350-foot stacks? Some people hate them. Most people hate them. Some people like them. Well, anyways, what we did is Cape Canaveral, we blew up a couple years ago. We actually demolished the plant. This plant's going to be going commercial now. I think in June of 2013, Cape Canaveral will be going commercial. The beauty of that is we spent $1 billion for 1,210 megawatts. That's less than $1 a watt. That's phenomenal. When you look at solar today, it's going for residential solar is going for about $6 a watt. Utility scale solar is going for about $2.50 a watt. For $2.50 a watt, solar you get 20% capacity. That means you get sun and energy for 20% of the time. When you do it on a natural gas plant, it's 90 to 100% of the time. That's the difference between the two. That's why the levelized cost of electricity is a lot lower with gas. Now, when you look at the efficiencies for all the engineers in the room, these were about 10,000 heat rates that we replaced with about $6,400 heat rates. What that means is you're burning about 33% less gas in this case, which is about a $500 to $700 million savings over the life of the asset to your customers. So when you take these two together, it's over $1 billion savings. That's what allows us to keep our costs down. And then the in-service dates, I'll show you the demolition of Riviera, but this is what Riviera is going to look like. And keep in mind, though, each of these projects also generates a tremendous amount of tax benefits to each of these cities and counties. Riviera alone is $20 million of tax benefits the first year. Libraries, schools, police departments, fire departments, right? So it's an incredible way in a down economy to invest a lot of capital, put a lot of people to work, and at the same time save the consumer money. So it's a great story. Will this just press it and it'll go, or? This is our boom. This is I got paid to blow up plants last year. It was a lot of fun. So this actually takes 7.1 seconds. That took a year of planning. We blew it up in 7 seconds. So for 1 year, we had every structural engineer, civil engineer looking at these assets. Keep in mind, there's $1 billion worth of transmission at these sites. You got intercoastal, you got port authorities, you got Coast Guards, you got Homeland Security. We had to coordinate with bazillions of people. When we did Riviera, because it was right on the intercoastal, it was really neat. I got to play media boy that day. So at 5:30 in the morning on Father's Day, we were at the top of the port of Palm Beach building, looking down. It was pitch black, but that's FPL. We were there very early. The boom was going to be at 8:30 in the morning. At 6:30, I could look at Peanut Island across, and people were camping in their tents, just waking up. The media got there about 6, and every 5 minutes they would ask you, what's going on now? Nothing. There's nothing going on now, right? This went on for about 2.5 hours till we actually blew up the thing. When you looked on the intercoastal, there was over 1,000 boats all over the intercoastal taking a look at this. And it's all over the YouTube. It's really cool. But with the beauty of it, we got to blow up 2 of these in 1 year. The week before we blew up Riviera, there was a horrific accident up in Ohio where they were blowing up something, and it started to come back. So you see all these little kids, school buses, everybody's running. Everybody's running away from the video. So we're like, this went up to our top management. Now, we're 1 week away, but they finally decided that's okay, let's have confidence, and thank God everything went right. Come this July, we're going to do this at Port Everglades. A little more challenging because Port Everglades has 4 stacks. And if you see these 2 stacks here, they're significantly thicker than the other 2. Now, Port Everglades has an airport. It's got a port. It's got everything you can imagine. So it's going to be a little challenging, but pretty confident. Now, what's amazing about this, too, is look at this heat rate. From the 6440, which was unprecedented, now it's going to be down to 6330. These are Siemens technology, Siemens turbines. German company. So the beauty of this is continuing to get better and better. The good news for us as consumers is that it also makes our electricity price even cheaper. So here's our 3 solar projects. Keep in mind, we built this in 2008. There was legislation that basically allowed 110 megawatts to be built in Florida. First come, first serve. It was the first company that was able to secure transmission, get the zoning, and get the permits. We ran out there. We were able to basically apply for all 3 projects. We were able to be first come, first serve. So we decided to try different technologies in different locations. At the time we did DeSoto, it was 25 megawatts, was the largest PV facility in the nation. And it was $6 a watt, very expensive. But it gave us the ability to learn how solar would, behave in Florida with all the intermittency, with all the cloud coverage. DeSoto is actually outperforming all of our estimates. We projected about a 23.2% capacity factor. We're at about 24. So that means 2 things. One is you're getting more sun, which is in a radiance per square foot, or you're getting more efficiency out of your machinery. So we track both. So it's doing very well. The beauty of DeSoto is that we have 13,000 acres, so we can scale this plant to 300 megawatts, which would be phenomenal, right? It'd be phenomenal. And then we also did a public-private partnership with NASA. This was a really cool project because it was on federal land. It was at the Cape. It was at the Kennedy Space Center. So when we went to lease their land, typically we're not very good at leasing land. We like to buy and own everything. But in this case, we wanted to work with NASA and as rocket scientists. So we offered to negotiate a lease with them, and we basically said we'll give you X amount of dollars, and they said we don't want cash. We said okay, all right. That's not too many people say that, right? Well, the reason for that was we didn't know is if you give the Kennedy Space Center cash, it goes to Washington. So they weren't able to keep any of their money. So we came up with a pretty cool concept. What we did was we negotiated a 30-year lease on their property, and then we took the net present value discounted back for the land and the O&M, and we took that and put a monetary value on it and said, we'll build you your own little power plant, a solar plant, which was 1 megawatt behind the fence, meaning behind the Space Center. So we built them their own little 1 megawatt facility. We operated for them. And the way their contracts work is that the federal projects get 2 RECs, which is renewable energy credits for every megawatt. So they're happy. They got a big award out of it. And then this one, this is really an interesting phenomenon. This is the first of its kind. This was a chance for us to really show some innovation. You would think utility companies are fairly bland, stale, but we've actually won. In the last 3 years, we've been the #1 innovation company in the energy sector and actually in the top 10 with Apple and Google and those guys. So it's pretty good. We've also got 7 years in a row as the most admired energy company in the nation, so by Fortune magazine. So anyways, it put those things to test. And what we did here is we've got the largest natural gas plant in the country right here. And what we did was we said, hey, that's already storage. It's already built-in storage, natural gas. So you don't have to worry about intermittency. If the sun's not out, the natural gas plant runs. So what we did is we connected to the same turbines. We connected gas plant, but not using PV. We use solar thermal, which are the mirrors, and these mirrors track the sun. We had a few issues. I got the fortune of being the guy who had to do all the stories on why the plant didn't perform as well as it should have. The reality was, I think there are a couple things happened. One is we did not account for the amount of expansion and retraction in the system because, obviously the heat and the cooling, so we had a major leak. And what's inside these solar mirrors is it's an oil. It's an oil, synthetic oil. So we had to shut the plant down for a while. The other thing is that the solar plant is basically hooked to the natural gas turbine unit 8. So when unit 8's down for outages, our solar plant was down. So even though we projected about 150,000 megawatt hours the first year, we came in at about 29,000. So it was pretty tough to send those reports to the PSC. And how many media? We had to do like 5 media interviews. And we just did another one this year. A couple weeks ago, I did 3 media. One was the fact that this year we got 88,000 megawatts. We're projecting 111. and we'll eventually get there. But it's been a pretty interesting story. But this was truly innovation. It's the first of its kind. And the only change is that when we built this plant, solar thermal was actually cheaper than PV. And today, PV is a lot cheaper than thermal, obviously because of scale. So right now, we own about 307 megawatts of solar, but we've got over 500 megawatts in development in California, Arizona, Nevada, and Texas. So we will quickly jump over NRG in this project. Okay. Okay, and this is, we just had an incredible milestone. We have just put in our over 10,000 megawatts of wind. That's an incredible, most utilities don't even have 10,000 megawatts of anything. It's 10,000 megawatts of wind. That's an incredible story. So that's like a large utility. We have, at FPL, for example, we have 24,000 megawatts, and we're one of the, on any given day, we're the third largest utility in the country. So 10,000 megawatts of wind, and you can see that the second is Iberdrola, which is a Spanish company, and they're doing a lot of stuff here, but they also did a lot in Spain. If you go through the, if you travel in Spain and you go on the transit, the train system, you can see a lot of the wind turbines all through the hills and the mountains. So most of our wind is from Texas all the way to Canada. So we're real proud of that accomplishment. And then right now we're actually, what you see, that thing called FIT is a feed-in tariff. What happened is the government puts in a plan that basically says for every megawatt of renewable energy, you will be compensated at X, which in this case was like 20 cents. So if the cost of electricity is 10 cents, but you put in renewable at 20, they will pay you for the 20 cents. So it allows us to aggressively go out there and it's a government subsidy program to take advantage. So we're building all over Canada right now. We also built a solar thermal project in Spain, and it's not like the one in Martin. These are not connected to a gas plant. These are standalone solar thermal projects. So, and this is the one we're building out in the desert. These are going to be monsters. I mean, 250 megawatts of solar out in the desert. These are going to be the solar thermal. And what they do is they actually track the sun. So these mirrors actually throughout the day, they basically chase the sun. And these get about 30% capacity out in the desert. So nuclear is, we're proud of our nuclear. I know nuclear gets a bad rap in the industry. There hasn't been a nuclear plant built in the United States since 1976, I think. But, you know, candidly, the nuclear plants run very well. It's part of the reason we've been able to keep our costs as low as they are. If you can see here, the typical bill in the United States is about $128 a month, and we're at $94. And the #1 project up there, the #1 area, Washington, that's predominantly hydro. And those were built in the 30s. And when they built the hydro plants in the 30s, it was an absolute rebellion because they said it was too expensive. And it was, you know, the utilities were under attack, similar to what you're hearing about solar today. So solar today, I could build you a solar plant for about $1.50, $1.60 a watt. That's pretty phenomenal because you'll never have to use fuel again. So for $1.60, you built it. The levelized cost will probably be about 11, 12 cents, but you never have to use any fuel. So what happens is solar is only going to be as good as the cost of natural gas. So today, it might seem a little higher, but it's a hedge. And when do you want to hedge? You want to hedge when natural gas prices are the lowest because it's only going to go this way. So as soon as we begin exporting to Europe and stuff, gas prices will probably go up, make solar even more attractive. So it's a nice ability to, I'm not talking about it's a game changer for everybody, but it is a natural opportunity for us to take advantage of an inherent fuel, which is solar, and it allows you to be able to balance a portfolio, not be overly dependent on one fuel versus another fuel. So it's a nice niche play. So nuclear, where we're at now is we just spent about $3 billion, what we call uprating. And this is, we added about 250 megawatts to both our Turkey Point and our St. Lucie facility. And those went on schedule, on budget. They're doing phenomenally well. The fuel savings alone in 1 month against a fossil plant is about $10 million. That's what you'd be spending on fuel with a nuclear plant. And this is, we're planning for the future where there's no real timeline, I think the key for us is to get the license. Once you get the license, you can monetize the license. But it does take, it's about a 10-year process once you get the license to get a nuclear plant built. So you've got a couple companies that are looking. One Southern company that's building the next generation of nuclear. And then you've got some other entities that are playing with it. But I think what the issue is, look, if you're a CEO of a company and your company's market cap is $20 billion, take a number, round number, it's going to cost you $18 billion to build a nuclear plant. It's going to cost you $1 billion to build a natural gas plant. Are you going to bet the company or not? And that's the debate that's going on with each CFO in the country. So even though nuclear is a great bet for the future, are you willing to bet the farm on the first one? That's the challenge that every CFO. So it's not a technical decision; it's an economic decision. So that's our challenge. And from an economic development, we just had 4,000 people working at St. Lucie on the uprate. And similar to a number like that at Turkey Point, right, Ramon? We had, how many people do we have working on it?
Around 4,000.
So in a time when you hear all these terrible stories about the economy and people unemployed, we're doing our best to keep people employed. And these are folks that are coming from, when we built that solar plant, we had Charlie, I can't remember his name, Charlie Gibson, ABC guy, did a story. For 3 days, there were people camped out outside our Martin facility looking, applying for jobs. So it's a great economic development. Energy is a great economic development play. So anyways, a lot of slides. Thank you for any questions. Can I take questions?